Hello and welcome to this English lesson at the airport. I'm currently standing in Terminal 3 at Toronto Pearson International Airport, and I'm here today because I want to make an English lesson for you about the words and phrases we use when we're at the airport. And I've already used the first word that I want to teach you, the word terminal. A terminal is a large building, and inside the building there are people getting ready to get on planes, and there's also people getting off of planes. Outside of the terminal, there are a lot of airplanes parked, getting ready either to have people come on board or for people to get off. So a terminal, a large building at an airport with lots of airplanes on the outside and lots of people on the inside. So this large building behind me is called a parking garage. When you drive to the airport, you need to find a place to park your car, and this is where you would park it. If, however, you're learning English in the UK, you might call this a car park or a multi-story car park. But here in North America, we just call this the parking garage. So there are two verbs I want to teach you that we often use when we're talking about the airport, and those are the verbs to drop off and to pick up. If you know someone who is going to go on a flight, you might need to drop them off at the airport. You might need to drive your car to the airport so that they can catch their flight. And then when they return, you might need to pick them up. You might need to go back to the airport with your car, and then when they get off the plane, they get in your car. You need to pick them up. So why do you come to the airport? You come to the airport to take a flight. Flight is the word we use to describe a trip on a plane. Maybe you're taking a flight to Florida. Maybe you're taking a flight to Paris. So there are two main areas in every airport. There's the arrivals area. The arrivals area is where people arrive on airplanes at the airport. There's also the departures area. The departures area is the area in the airport where people go when they need to get on their plane, when they need to board their plane. So there's two areas in the airport: the arrivals area where people arrive, and the departures area where people go when they're ready to go on their flight. So there are two types of boards that you can find at an airport. The first type of board is called a departures board. On the departures board, you can find your flight and then see if it is on time. If it is on time, that means it's going to leave at the time they said it was going to leave. It might say that your flight is boarding, in which case you probably should run because people are getting on the plane right now. It might also say your flight is delayed, which means it will leave at a later time, or it might say that your flight is canceled, which means that it's not going to leave at all. And then, of course, there's the arrivals board, which is the same thing, and it simply lists the flights that are arriving. So two types of boards: the departures board and the arrivals board. So there are two verbs that we use when we talk about getting on a plane and getting off a plane. We will often use the verb to board. It's time to board the plane, which means it's time to get on the plane. The other verb is the verb to deplane, and sometimes we use an older verb to disembark. That means to get off the plane. So when you need to get on the plane, they'll say it's time to board. It's time to get on the plane. And if you're sitting on the plane, they might say it's time to deplane. It's time to get off the plane. Another thing you'll find at the airport is something called an escalator. An escalator is this really cool moving stairs that allows you to go from one floor to another. So there are three things you need if you want to take a flight. The first thing you need is a ticket. A ticket is simply proof that you paid for the flight. It might be a digital ticket or an e-ticket on your phone, or it might actually be a piece of paper. You also need a boarding pass. This as well might simply be on your phone, or it might be a piece of paper you get when you check in at the airport. The boarding pass is proof that you are allowed to be on that flight. And then the third thing you need is ID. Probably the best form of ID would be your passport, but you might want to bring a driver's license or another form of ID as well. By the way, ID is short for identification. So three things that you need. You need a ticket, you need a boarding pass, and you need some form of identification. So one of the things you need to do when you get to the airport is you need to check in. This basically lets the airport know that you are here and that you're planning to get on your flight. Part of the process when you check in is that you need to check your bags. So here we have a baggage check area or a baggage drop-off area. You will use one of these machines to basically print a luggage tag. You will put it on your luggage and then you will drop it into the baggage drop-off area. So what do you do when you get to the airport? You need to check in. you need to check your bags, you need to print luggage tags, and you need to drop off your bags so they can put them on the airplane. So, you've arrived. Where do you get your checked bag? The bags that you checked in to go on the flight? Well, you come to the baggage claim. The baggage claim is the area of the airport where all of your luggage will come when they unload the plane. So, you check your bag before you go on a flight, and then when you arrive, you go to the baggage claim to get your baggage back. So there are a few different words you can use to talk about your luggage. So you could say that you have suitcases, you could say that you have baggage, you could say that you have luggage. Sometimes I even just say bags. And there's a few different kinds of bags. The larger suitcases or the larger pieces of luggage are the ones that you need to check in so they can put it into the airplane. But there's also something called a carry-on, which is a much smaller piece of luggage. And then there's something called a personal item, which is more like just a backpack or a purse, a small backpack, by the way. So a couple different ways to talk about it. You can say luggage, you can say suitcases, you can say baggage. And then when you talk about the smaller one, it's a carry-on. And then if it's something really tiny, like a purse or backpack, we simply call it a personal item. So there's a place at the airport called security, and you need to line up so that you can go through security. Now, security is just a short way of saying security checkpoint or security screening point. And it's the place at the airport where they look inside your carry-on bags and your personal items to make sure everything inside is safe. And then the two verbs that I use, to line up means to stand with other people and wait so that you can see the security people and they can check your bag. And then the process of going from one side to the other, we use the verb to go through. So at the airport, you need to line up so that you can go through security so that you can get on the plane. So at the airport, every place where a plane is parked is attached to a gate to the terminal. And so when you go to the airport, you have to figure out which gate you need to go to in order to get on your plane. So this area has gates B and C. So if your flight was leaving from gate B2, you would come to this area and you would go to that gate, which is basically the area from which you can directly board the plane. Well, thank you so much for watching this English lesson at the airport. I hope you were able to learn some new English words and phrases that you can use in your next English conversation. Thanks again for watching. Don't forget to click that red subscribe button, give me a thumbs up, leave a comment, and I'll see you next week with another English lesson. Bye.